오래가 시기쯤에 오래가 시기쯤에 다가 있었잖아. 다가 있어. 이 양의 주지 잔주기네 그래서 팀에 다가 있었잖아. 이 다야 그 너무나 다다가 있었잖아. 그래서 이게 잔주기가 되지 팀에 쓰더라. 이게 지제스더라. 한국인은 지제 이게 팀에 쓰더라. 그냥 감시를 신기 팀에 다가 있어요. 감사. 내가 신기 팀에 다가 있어야 된다. 그 선제기는 것은 신기 팀에는 다가 있어요. 다시 안에 교수자 자기는 제일 지난 매가 있어. 이 가와도 쓰게. 이 또 가와서.
So dealing with the latter four topics, yesterday, after initial discussion of how the latter four are conditions for achieving the initial three, then part of that verse also stated that the nature of them is something that is uniquely an object of Buddha's awareness. So the characteristic that was mentioned, term that was mentioned to describe this was that they're inconceivable or incapable of being comprehended by ordinary persons. So we discussed that inconceivability in relation to the form of the mind's pure nature, which is said to be tainted. So the Buddha nature, as it exists in beings prior to their enlightenment, is said to be subject to impurity. And so the difficulty at that point was, how can it be that something which is innately pure is subject to being polluted? That's a sort of a seems contradictory or difficult to comprehend. And the next topic, enlightenment, is described in terms of that same ultimate nature of the mind, which is upon the attainment of enlightenment, is described as being vimala. Vimala can be taken to mean free of stains or having had stains removed. So in either case, compared to the Buddha nature prior to enlightenment, which is said to be tainted, and the Buddha nature, not Buddha nature, but the mind's ultimate nature at the time of enlightenment, somehow being described as something that has been freed of stains, that also is inconsistent with the idea that the mind's ultimate nature has never been impure since beginningless time. So that the nature of emptiness is this ultimate purity. If it was pure to begin with, how does it become freed of impurities as a way of describing the nature of enlightenment? So that becomes a locution and an idea which seems inconsistent or contradictory or puzzling, shall we say, at the very least. So in that sense, inconceivable and difficult to understand.
어디 현재 한팀에 가르사리 전주 팀에 왔디 아니 현재 한 지제 되다 오예미 인스를 봐. 감 지금 내가 지금 내가 전주기 생지기 칸 라시메가 되다 오예미 인스를 봐. 오예미는 그 지만 제를 그래서 감 대신 지만 제를 봐. 그 지만 내가 전주기 지만 제를 봐. 그래서 그게 뭐 이름이는 지금 내가 김인세한테 되게 말했어.
뭐 이름이는
뭐 지제생 중이
일단
제주도 뭐 이름이나
네네
지제생 중이 지만 제발봐.
네네
그게 뭐 이름이고 그랬어. 이는 그 지만 매시한테 지금 말했어.
that's
okay.
Yeah, that's what Gyumed Australia may have said. Or Yermi, that's what.
Yermi is a good DJ.
DJ, but Janju Malayan, DJ Tantra.
That the Janju to Indonesia, the man never said the thing over to Lucy.
So, another way to describe, another way to sort of approach this problem, intellectual, is so we have two phases of the mind's ultimate nature. We have the mind's ultimate nature that's described as a constituent element. And when we use that term, we mean the mind's ultimate nature prior to enlightenment or of unenlightened beings. That form of the constituent element, that constituent element rather, is described as being the tainted ultimate nature or the tainted reality. And then when we talk about the ultimate nature of the Buddha's omniscience, that is described in the language of the treatise as being a form of reality which has been freed of states. Those two expressions suggest some kind of difference. However, the reality of the so-called stained reality, the reality of the mind prior to enlightenment, and the reality of the mind upon becoming enlightened, both of those are one and the same reality. That reality is undifferentiable. They are not distinct from one another. They're not isolable entities. So in that sense, if the so-called untainted or purified reality is undifferentiable from the tainted reality or impure reality, then undifferential means indistinguishable. Then how can it change from something that is described as, at the earlier time, as being tainted, and how can it then take on another quality which is being described as free from those things, having been freed from those things? If it's undifferentiable, it means indistinguishable. So how can you make that distinction? In other words, if it's the initial ultimate nature is one that is qualified by being impure, and the latter stage is said to be indifferentiable from it, make the distinction that allows you to describe it as a reality that has been freed from states. It doesn't seem to be logically coherent.
ranshiki jimata jele chane yerme sores. Dambukune ranshiki jimata senje juji kamti ranshiki jimata dabarwa ranshiki dabarwa. Ranshiki jimata jele chane di moye shebades. 근데 지만 메시아 디루부기 지만테 되잖아요. 지만 메시아 디루부기 지만테 제 말봐. 라시기 지만테 제어봐.
나를
지제 스승에스 나를 지제 스라디 루부기 지만테 제가. 나를 야 ran 뭐 지면대로 마셔야지.
No, rami no víctima taleba.
Rang mola, la cineriti,
No,
rang mola, cimele van mashus. La ciguresa la yesati, la cigutima tabe chanishabis. Tilukape. La cigutima, tilukshabiba.
ore,
Di chanishabis. La cineriti. Rangi, reso serti.
rami no es lugar ranshinki.
Rangi moti, ranshiki time tabe chane. Tati ranshiki time tabe chane shena sangegi chungi ta senjegi chungi yerne. Tas sangegi chungi ti chungi meba shaka. senjegi chungi jije shagrava. Di lubu gimal sharis.
So, it essentially solves the problem. Gives the answer of how to resolve this seeming inconsistency is the ultimate nature or the true nature or the reality of the constituent element that of the unenlightened person's mind is described as being undifferentiable from the reality of the Buddha's mind. It is referring to the fact that both of those terms are referring to an innate purity. And the innate purity that the mind possesses at all times, prior to and subsequent to enlightenment, is that consists of being free of any self-existent nature. That innate purity is not a purity that is addressing or in any way connected with those adventitious states. Saying the mind's innate purity consists in, or is its essence derives from the radiant purity that the mind possesses when you realize that it lacks self-existence. That being the mind's true nature, that being the mind's innate purity. The same thing is that quality is identical in the mind of the Buddha. So their indifferentiability is at that level. And so when we say that one of them is an impure reality, and the other one is a purified reality, those qualifiers, impure versus pure, don't have anything to do with the innate purity of the mind in both instances. So that is the way in which to clarify the seeming inconsistency of those terms.
That is Chile Bedunda Nando Bedunda Nando Yoroshi Chugibas Jero Sangi Lady Ni Chugibas Bedunda Nando Chugibas Sangi Dujet Kala Kanza Dunchigera Dujet Gashi Susu Ombugan better tuna, better tuna. To get together. He is the Japanese time. They did the number she said that I'm going to treat them, but he talk about it. You just can't the timber thing we are. The number.
So, skipping over the sixth topic and going to the topic of the Buddhist activities. So the inconceivability that relates to the Buddhist activities was previously described as stemming from the characteristics of Buddha's activities of being without any discriminative thought, without any premeditation, and being activities, but nevertheless being activities that manifest spontaneously or effortlessly. So those characteristics are obviously it's easy to understand what that is something rather deep and something hard to fathom. But in terms of what it implies, it implies that while the Buddhas do not have to consider what sort of activities to undertake, and they respond to whatever the needs of particular followers that are at hand, whatever is suitable for them. So that is the way in which to, in a more simple way, to understand how the Buddha's activities, in fact, manifest themselves. There's that they are dependent. They're not dependent upon meditation. They don't require any effort. What determines the form that they take is the nature of the objects to whom they are revealed. And so the same term, constituent element, is used as that term is used to talk about the Buddha nature of beings. It's also used to describe sort of the inclinations and the propensities of beings, which vary in myriad ways. And so the Buddha's activities are unfolding in accordance with what those dispositions that sentient beings have, and therefore become what is appropriate or suitable for them, rather than what the Buddha determines as some sort of absolute thing that must be taught.
어디기 그놈이 난도 야말봐 내내야 그 삼바트 트리시 최지 숨기야봐 어때디 디다 삼바트 트리시 템바라 그놈이 그놈이 매가 아니 디다 삼바트 트리시 된다 야말이스 세상 생기도 세야 되던데 남도는 내가 세야 되다 가는 간는 쉬었다는 이거지 가와를 잘안도는 가와를 지는 게 여러분 디 포버 가와를 샤스 저는 나가게 달치 차도 당인데 사제 딜에 땅도 딜에 땅도 딜 땅도 딜 생이 땅도 나 땅도 쓰지 남도 야말봐 남도 야말이 차거디 마비응이야봐 그때는 이제 산지를 구는 남도 야말이 뒤절을 취해 차거디 네 스스로 같은 거지 거기에 땡기야봐 어떻게 또 가와래 샤스
So this again at this point, the subject or the discussion in the treatise is in relation to the difficulty of comprehending or fathoming the nature of the topic. So this topic is the Buddha's activities. And or one way to appreciate what this is referring to is to think or to compare it to the way we normally would imagine the activity of teaching someone. So we would imagine that we would take stock of a particular individual or group of individuals and have to make some determination as to, what their condition was, who they were, what their level of understanding was. Make some judgment about whether it was appropriate to teach them, and if so, what to teach them, or if it was not appropriate to teach them, to make the determination not to teach them. And so all of this kind of deliberation is something that we take as a normal way of, making some sort of determination about how to act, and especially in terms of teaching, how to convey some meaning to others. So that what this point is saying is that in the case of the Buddhas, none of that takes place. That the Buddhas have no dualistic mind. So they make no judgments about how to act, and their actions are without any. They require no force in order to be implemented. So that's kind of, when you use that kind of language to describe them, if you think about it, that should give you some pause as to how that's possible. And that's what's meant by that, to say that it's inconceivable or difficult to understand. So in fact, the treatise in a later chapter, and Rinpoche introduces one of them, uses some similes to convey the nature of how the Buddha's activities take effect. And so he says it's like space. And when rain falls from the sky or space, the sky does not does not undergo any process of consideration. Oh, today I shall drop rain here or not drop rain here, or I shall put the rain down in this part of the earth and not that part of the earth. That the rain simply falls, and as it does, it takes effect on various elements of the earth, of vegetation, and it affects them in varying ways that are suitable to those objects, particularly plants, like vegetation. And they are nourished by it, or they are developed by it, kind of without any deliberation or any plan involved. It just occurs. So this is one simile that's used to try to convey the nature of Buddha's activity.
That in the Gyumed said, Nando said to Tobarwa, Sanjay Tobatada, Saji Chetukin, Patu, Tobayari. There is Sanjay Kumato in Tobayamari, Musu issue, Tobayama. He may have been some nobody, Sangi to a lawyer, two semi-aris, no gigaris.
So another description is relevant to this topic. There are passages, there are assertions in the scriptures which address the idea. In fact, one of the qualities of the Buddha was that the Buddha is unchangeable, is immutable. And that there is no movement of thought, which has a specific meaning to it. But by some, the conclusion is drawn that it means the Buddha has no thought per se of any kind. That's what it means. This is a misunderstanding of what the unchangeable nature of the Buddha means. What's unchangeable is that the Buddha does not have any conceptual thought, any dualistic thought, any conceptual mind. The Buddha's awareness is one that is always direct perception, direct awareness. So what does not move in the Buddha's awareness is there's no appearance of, there's no activity in the form of conceptual thought. That's what it means that the Buddha's mind is unchangeable. Not to say he doesn't have a mind or does not have awareness.
That's the Toja, Toba, Yana, Toba GGT, Olimchi, Tajusun, that Toja Kimata Cheve, the Shimis, Toja Seti, and the Toba Chave, Genti Karesne, Toja the Kimata Cheve, the Shimi, Kimata Cheve, the Shimi. Matoba the quality camera. The sim, the material sim, chungi to Tosuna. Quality to be a Masana, Tocha di Caresana. Tocha Toba di, say it Tocha, the material teaching each. The Musum to Donna quality, Musum to Matona quality. Musum the Donna, Sangi should be given to that. Musum to Matona, Qualegan, Metura, Yana Public Javas, Yensa, Yana Public Javati, and the needed in Project of a key initiative.
So then, leaving that as the general description of the inconceivability inconceivability of those latter topics. Then verse 26 in the root text, first chapter, says, again, it's continuing to refer to these four topics, but in a different vein. So it says, the object to be realized. Here in this translation, is the object to be enlightened. I don't think that's really. Tokya means to be, to gain. You have to gain an understanding. Future participle of to realize. That which is to be realized rather than to be enlightened. And then second, these are all relating to the root bud, which means to become aware of. So the object that one needs to become aware of, the awareness itself, the limbs of that awareness, and then fourthly, the act of bringing about awareness in others. So that's using the same verbal root to describe all four of those qualities. So the thing to be realized, right? Tokya or bodhya means that which one needs to realize, is the tainted form of reality, the tainted form of the mind's ultimate nature, of the so-called constituent element. And that is the thing that needs to be realized by not realizing directly. Here, realize means to perceive directly. Then, by not realizing that object, one is subject to continuous wandering in samsara. By realizing it, then one can free oneself from samsara and ultimately develop the qualities of Buddha's enlightenment. So it's in that sense that the tainted reality, that word for Buddha nature, or the ultimate nature of the unenlightened being's mind, is the thing that needs to be realized. So in this text, the focus of this text is we need to realize the true nature of our own minds, make purity of our own minds.
Topati yala setita, topati ski seti, ani chanchuti, ani tochi dishini musu topa, chanchuti che, tati yala tila ni, tochi chen suti, chen kasa. Chile sunduti di yana cheva.
Tokacheva dida shimekwa. Tokacheva.
Tokacheva. Chanchuti.
Tokadi chanchu.
Tokasti.
Chanchu. Topa.
Topa di se topa se di chanchuti. Di yana di.
Tokacheva
di mare. Tocha se tocha di kasa di topa di chanchuti. Di yana se di yuendeche. Di kusesuga yara ini kare yara nam yara toba jeba di chesesuga
toba jeba
di
So the remaining three terms are then the awareness or realization itself. Right? So in this case, it doesn't mean only the direct realization of tainted mind's ultimate nature, but it means the supreme realization of enlightened bodhi, which is often a term that means enlightenment. Then its limbs or its subsidiary qualities, Ngak means then the other spiritual qualities which the Buddhists have, such as the. And then the act of bringing about realization is that which brings realization, that which causes realization. It says, Jampa in rnam is the active form of producing that realization. It's describing the Buddha's activities. The Buddha's activities cause others to be able to gain that realization.
That Guru Jishin, Nesumi, the Mata Taki gain, Nesumbuta, Janjuke, Yente, Tile Sumbuti, and the Matachi.
No.
Gain, Judy,
No.
you can't give us a
No.
yes, I couldn't. Meaning, you know, this
No.
Janju the Casa,
No.
Lady Jet.
No.
The dance of the day,
No.
the dance,
So then among these four topics, then one is called the primary cause. The other three are called the contributing factors. Okay, the translation says here. One subject signifies the cause, the remaining three are the conditions, cooperating causes for its purification. Right? Its purification means purification of that tainted form of the mind's ultimate nature. Okay? So that mind's ultimate nature is the main cause or the main material cause or source. So it's defined as that which becomes enlightened or becomes a Buddha is that innate purity of the mind. That's the underlying cause. And the other three factors, so that's the innate purity of the tainted mind. And the other three factors, enlightenment, ultimate awareness, then the qualities that accompany that ultimate awareness, Buddha's qualities, and the Buddha's activities, those three, latter three topics are the factors that contribute to the purification of that tainted ultimate nature. So it's speaking metaphorically, to purify that which is innately pure.
that thing. Because it shares on the condition of the Isha. Duty and she shasana. Other than the James should be
So this is now describing the efficacy of these four latter topics. They're the causal factors. The result entities are the three ratnas themselves, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, are the result. These latter four topics are those things which bring about that result, being the cause, the essential cause itself, or the factors that contribute to that cause being transformed into those three practices.
But that because she's one because the Shibuti, Chimasumuti, Chingu Sunday, Chingu, and the Tilesum Shabi, or Kukuli Shabra, Shingu, Kus and the Penasangi, Namaki, or the Kukula, Changu TV, Changu Jet, and his DVD, and the Danny, and Mandu Chief. Yamsuna, Riti,
Moderate.
Maranjuli,
Moderate.
Ini yang lembaga ini Riti komina tani, tertubi. Rangile chungju kunju sum kubara. Oh, tadi sini. Ada tu syawir, anda di. Kalau ni cibiar, kunju sum tu Gyusha. Kunju sum tu tiada sya, syengyu, kunju sum tu syengyu, kunju sum tu tiada. Di sini di kawasan Riti. Syengyu itu sampai kunju sum tu tenji. Ani dah rangile jungil ki janju yende chile sum tu jerusa. Waktu siang ni ya.
Then you can take this to consider as well. The 7 topics can be a perspective in relation to all 7 topics. Can be taken 2 ways. Then one way is to think of the 3 Ratnas as the result that you seek to attain. And the 4th topic is you, in the sense of being someone who possesses the seed of enlightenment, but that seed is tainted. And then the enlightenment of the 5th topic, qualities of that enlightenment, the 6th topic, and the activities that flow from that enlightenment, the last topic, represent qualities that are possessed by beings other than you, which Buddha Shakyamuni has achieved enlightenment and the qualities of enlightenment and carried out the activities of enlightenment. So then, based on those causal factors, then your impure Buddha nature then can be purified, resulting in your attainment of the 3 Ratnas. So we thought of it that way. Or you can turn it around. And then you can look at the 3 Ratnas. You can think of the 3 Ratnas as the 3 Ratnas that have been achieved by others. Of the enlightenment, which is the 5th topic, and the qualities of that enlightenment state and the activities from that enlightenment state are the ones that you seek to achieve by purifying your which is the 4th topic. So it can be looked at from in both of those.
제불바 어디지 군저 승시에 제불을 샤빈바 어디 군저 클론지 당연히 안될 클론지 제베는 군저 승부티 길으샤 제부티 양주지 덱스에 승부티 어디 안될 클론지나
So these two perspectives are described as the nirvana wheel or the Ratna wheel. So the wheel being that which turns and serves as a cause for attaining a result. So Angudi Nyangdere. So the first perspective was the wheel of nirvana. Nirvana meaning the nirvana of Buddha. So the cause being those latter two topics, the result being your attainment of the three dharmas, the state of the three dharmas. The other way was to, and those being the result, three dharmas. The other way was to think of the three ratnas as the cause, and the enlightenment and enlightened qualities and the activities being the goal that you seek. That formulation is described as the Ratna wheel. I mean, wheel, I presume, mean cause or source of the attainment of the result. So you can think of them as one being the cause of the other, or the other being the cause of the former.
Rationality, meaning to yes, shasana. Semenjak sembilan ebati sabun maris, Gyumed maris, Gyushi shaberba,
Gyushi ore,
Gyushi shan senetena jangju je, chen sunji, yenengi Gyushi.
That doesn't mean rationally the Gyumed maris.
That Gyumed maris, kalau kita juta berba. The Sabin to Dana Shabby Institute. Jidele Debe Chuki Sabin Dane Shabby, which is the company to Kumba, some machine never to Kumba Tene, any who Ajan negotiate the Kumba Tene, any. Sanji to Kubantuya, Tabatuya, Nubish, Shabba, Shabia,
the Combalate.
Rationally, Combalate, the Shabba is a cooler.
Sabin.
Sabin means is Sabin Maris.
직접 그 싸워요, right?
스타워티 야말 스타티
that's
겐 뉴스는 아니 부티
okay.
겐 부티
Okay.
그 치에서 다 유세티 두티 데비셰르가.
So, and another point is made. So, we've addressed these now the latter four topics as being thought of in terms of causal factors, the constituent element being said to be the fundamental cause or the material cause for the attainment of enlightenment. In commentary, the point is made. Fact of the matter is that this fundamental constituent, the innate purity of the mind, is an unconditioned entity. It is emptiness itself. It's the mind's emptiness. And the emptiness cannot act genuinely as a seed or a cause. The seed is something that is an impermanent object. Only impermanent objects have true causal efficacy. So when we say that that constituent element is a seed or a cause, it is only in a metaphorical sense that it is referred to that way. And the way to understand the reason for describing it as a cause is that it is by meditating on the mind's true nature, the mind's ultimate nature, by gaining an understanding of it and cultivating that understanding, that process serves to bring about the arising of the qualities of enlightenment. But that state itself is not acting as a true cause. So this is a point that is worth noting.
Dati nganduri ngarambi gyuge sen rahiniriti sen tende tongati ni di sabu ngati mari che ine ngarambi sen rahineva kombala teni sabin shireva sabin shireva shireva ni kombala teni aja shireva tang niba tang sabin shireti chiba shirya sabin ngati kore desina sama tula ina susu kyu sama tula niba su Kompany,
Ishit.
Kompany, ishit. Sabi mo na rin. Parang you get company, same company. Kasi meron is sabi mo tabaris. Kumbara tayo sabi shell. Ano to be curious. Sabi mo na di kaya siya wala sa na. Simara simba. Tony Kompany ishit.
So when we use the word seed, for instance, as a term that's meant to indicate some sort of causality, obviously that's a metaphor in itself. But using the word seed, terms that are equivalent to the word seed are potential. Nuva means power or capacity or potential. Thirdly, Vajak means then imprints which can manifest themselves a certain way. So these three meant to be equivalent, and they're referring to the mind's lack of self-existence, but only metaphorically. because the mind's lack of self-existence is an uncaused and an unconditioned entity which act in the capacity of directly bringing about some result. So then we would want to know, or we want to describe, well, what constitutes the actual seed? What is the thing that actually brings about the arising of the result of enlightenment itself? And that is, in the case of someone who has not yet achieved the direct realization of emptiness, for example, it would be those forms of meditation in which you are cultivating your understanding of that mind's true nature. That cultivation of the awareness of that ultimate nature is what is really the potential that is responsible for ripening into the awareness that constitutes the ultimate goal of enlightenment. So it is yeshe. Yeshe means transcendent awareness. So prior to changing the path, then not transcendent awareness, but then the correct mind which meditates on emptiness and eventually becomes a direct realization, and that direct realization that is a form of transcendent awareness is further cultivated, and that process represents the actual seed, the actual causal force, the actual potential that manifests in life.
동이 공부지, 동이 공부 이시티, 다들 이시세에 랑을 제가 있는 랑 수수기, 랑을 뒤를 맞춰서 간사를 수기, 랑 수수 동이 공부 이시 로지에라, 동이 공부 로지, 상기를 사이, 동이도 이시티, 얘네기 주문에 제지, 나랑도 제비. 다들 동반이 공부해. 아니 동반 상기 사이 장주 이마다 저기 시티. 근데 저가 가르치는 것도 동반이 공부해. 동반이 공부는 별로 되게 나는 마시베니까 사건이 동반이 공부에 로티샤다. 이 지야 남토인데 지야 코네 콘디티 그러봐. 동이도 이 시티 차르다. 야야야야 지치. 아니지. 그래서 우리 상기 tuljuni. 남기 면해지게라.
랑기 예셰거라는 게 규래. 아니 랑마 토베 돈이 공배 이체디 사벨 되더라.
말만 지사벤티 람마트베네게스
또
상기 시 규가레야레스나 제샤 람을 주인데 타네타 동이도베 이시지 이시기 예 예능이 규리
예능이 규도 네가 예능이 규래
네가 예능이 규리 나란도 예능이 규리에서 그래 상기 남기 예능이 규가샤스나 돈이 공배 로티샤 이야야 chen 야타르 chen 랑기 모두 그래 랑기 야야야 chen 남기 모두 뒤에 강가로 예능이 규리
강가인데 사ben 쓰는 얘기래 예능 무기서
다 언제지 자주단 신규비 자주스도가 신규비 자주
그래
근데 되게 예능이 좋다는 얘기야 코타 프로젝트 봐 켄제 코피 신규비야 봐 신규비를 자주단 수비 아니 야 가르스게 켄제 미션지기 사 얘는 지게 안 말해. 그거 신비를 샤워가. 我今年上跟你估计三分的改下是呢，哪个定义？你跟我们有用的，我不解。后来你三分是的，他的建的出的语的都是，过去的语的都是要你跟我们不一样的。嘛呢，可你跟我们用的那个点，可能这个单业的，可能见识的，我的点是的，你的就几些一下，见的了松下上啊，一下有的见松的的，我就可能就在那见松的的讲究，新语的讲究，面对切松下，原来的。
dKon.
Nyene ki kandati, nyene ki tuti, rashini di shabraba. Di ko sabi kulatin sabi shabra zamte me shuti. Nyene ngune ti maris. Nyene ngune ti ka dunya ti karesa tungi ukabra.
So the point that's being made is the following: that these four topics, the constituent element, enlightenment's qualities, and Buddha's activities. These are all in this verse 27, 26, 26, second half of verse 26, are describing these four qualities as elements, causal elements leading to the attainment of Buddhahood by a practitioner. And the constituent element itself is described as the cause, the primary cause. The other three qualities are described as factors, contributing factors. So the point being made here is identifying the constituent element as the primary cause or the material cause. It's not meant literally. It's meant figuratively, metaphorically. What is the actual material cause that brings in, like, what, if you take the example of a seed, or if you think of a barley seed, the barley seed that's planted in the ground is what evolves into the fruit of the barley stalk with the grain at the top. That's the result. And the water and the warmth and the fertilizer, those have no essential quality that is present in the result or in the cause. They favor, they enhance, they bring about the development of that seed. So, using that model, it's not the constituent element that is the material cause of attaining Buddhahood. It's the mind, the wisdom, that meditates on that constituent cause. Prior to attaining the path, we don't have a form of transcendent realization, but it's an awareness, a wisdom. The wisdom that accompanies our mind consciousness, which we cultivate continuously. That form of manaskara, that form of mental, continuous mental training. That is the material cause. Once we attain the transcendent path, then we do have yeshe. Yeshe is jhana. Jhana means then transcendent awareness, from direct realization of the mind's ultimate nature. So that's the continual development of the seed, which ultimately ripens into the knowledge, the ultimate knowledge of enlightenment itself. And when it says enlightenment and the Buddhist qualities and Buddhist activities, then we have to recognize that those are, so another significant point is that the mind that is meditating on that constituent element is your mind, our own individual minds. That, particularly the mind that is focused on the nature of that realizes what that nature is and is meditating on it. That wisdom that accompanies that mind consciousness. That's what is the true cause, the true material cause. Then the enlightenment and Buddhist enlightened qualities and Buddhist activities are not part of us at all. Those are the enlightenment and the Buddhist qualities and activities that exist in some being other than us, who has already attained those qualities. And those are the contributing factors that promote the development of our own wisdom that is meditating on that constituent. So this is a point that is kind of flows from this latter half of this verse 26 that describes these four latter qualities as being and some causal aspect.
Yeah. Oh, that is it. I think that is the Papa Bedding Dole, Jefferson, Namsha, Juguane, Namsha Juguane, and you this. Ever and Pate, Jambu, the function. Other the Papa Bedding Dole, and you did. Namsha number 2 says, Namsha number 2 says, when I tell Papa, Papa Bedding Dole,
Ricky Court.
Oh, great.
Then now the next topic is relating specifically to the fourth topic. Now we'll focus on that constituent element itself. Right? And the next series of verses is largely based on passages from the Srimala Devi Sihanada Sutra, which is one of the main sources for the treatise, the overall treatise of the Uttaratantra. And this next section encompasses 10 presentations, 10 points, formulation of 10 points that clarify the subject, this principal subject of the constituent element, or the impure reality.
That is number 2, the conditions, and number 2 is the
Gyumed and
more than 3 things.
and then you share it. Yarmeva. Okay. So this is in verse 29, I think, at least in the edition that I have. It identifies these 10 points. 10 are an essential nature, it's its own nature in this translation. So bhava, then quality of being a cause, quality of being a result, quality of carrying out an action, here it says function. Then yoga means then having qualities then connected with it, here it says union. And then manifestation means how that germ or how that that constituent element, how it becomes evident. Described as manifestation here. Then stages, Ngak, is the stages that it undergoes. The fact, so that's how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? And one is the eighth one is its universality or its omnipresence, and then its unchangeability, its eternal immutability, if you like, sada vikarito. It's never undergoing change. Then the last one, the last one is then being undifferentiated.
These are all.
So this represents the extensive discussion relating to the constituent element. And you take a longer phrase would become means the constituent element that is the embryo of the Tathagata. I like the word embryo. Here it says he calls it a matrix.
That is comparing to the shadow. The you don't know the most to this Chinese swimming.
No. So there's an ancillary point, ancillary to these 10 topics, which is in the edition that I'm using. This verse is addressed in verse 28. In particular, the Buddha's body penetrates everywhere. Reality is of undifferentiated nature. The spiritual lineage, which is germ, exists always. Therefore, all living beings possess the embryo of the Buddha, or the matrix of the Buddha. All living beings, it actually says all embodied beings. All Lu Chen is all another word for sentient being. This so this verse, the crux of this verse is making a statement, which is that this Buddha nature is present everywhere, is present in all beings, and it gives three reasons, I think. Yes. The first one is that the Buddha's body then radiates everywhere. Lobsang ku trochir dam. Di kangala legio asigati.
그래서는 상계비 추구 치레디 센세 탐선 쳐요. 말하는 교환나 기회를 생제 내지를. 교환나 기회를 교환 매를 생제 단에 말이.
교환 매를 생제 내지.
제가 근데 상계비 치레세요. 교환 탐제 상계비 치레를 샤워. 상계비 치레세요. DJ 저와 유리가 상계비 치레세요. 상계비 치레세요. rgyud 이시 주비 다경의 때문에 중에 남가를 기능 대체 남가를 기능 대체는 교화를 쓰게 세상 승제 근제 기능 뒤를 교화를 매번 야말 교화나도 야리스 뒤에서는 승제 기신구 야리스게 조상 그 처치에 따라서 상계비 치레 아니면 생제 탐제 있다는 주거래스. 이사 생제 탐제를 의심이 야래스.
So this first reason, which says that the Buddha's body radiates, implied radiates throughout, radiates everywhere. One sense of it is that the Buddha's activities are unlimited, and there's no sentient being who's not affected by the Buddha's activities. Be affected by the Buddha's activities. And given that fact, then the potential for beings to develop exists everywhere. The Buddhas have the ability to, in the sense of causing them to generate virtue. So another way of describing that is to say that, to make the assertion, there's no sentient being who does not possess virtue, does not have some virtuous quality, has not created a virtue. That's a corollary of this assertion. So, and that point stems from the definition of Buddha's activities. And Buddha's activities are defined as chubu dKon jebare. The definition of Buddha's activity is yeshe chubu. Yeshe chubu means the wisdom body of the Buddha, chubu dharmakaya, which is omniscient. Yeshe chubu. dKon means a governing cause. It is the governing cause that produces Buddhist activities. dKon means any literally pure quality, literally any white quality, but here white means virtuous quality, any virtuous qualities. So that definition of Buddha's activity leaves open the interpretation that it doesn't necessarily mean an activity coming from the Buddha per se. It means that when any sentient being carries out or generates some virtuous element, that is ultimately due to the governing cause of the Buddha's Dharmakaya. Therefore, it is an aspect of Buddha's activities. But anytime anyone creates a virtue for themselves, it's ultimately due to the influence of the Buddha's Dharmakaya. By definition, a form of Buddha's activities. And this is indicative of this notion that the Buddha's kaya, right, meaning Dharmakaya, radiates everywhere. That is one reason for asserting that everyone has Buddha nature.
That's Distinguishing the Tantra. Yudakarasana Sangi Gyumed. So
the point is, sort of the reason for saying everyone has Buddha nature is because you cannot posit the existence of a sentient being whom the Buddha's influence does not reach. So this is saying that everyone, as mentioned, then that also means that everyone has some degree of virtue in them. And that virtuous quality that they have comes from the Buddha, from the Buddha's Dharmakaya. Ultimately, its source is that. And so that is evidence of the Buddha's activities, and also evidence of the fact that beings have the ability to develop spiritual, and therefore possess that. It's meant as a reason to prove that the ultimate nature of every sentient being's mind is emptiness. And that emptiness is the quality which allows that Buddha's nature to take effect.
That Yen said,
And the second reason that's given is that the suchness, tatata, is a synonym for reality. That's the suchness of ultimate truth is without difference, is undifferentiable. So that means that the ultimate nature of sentient beings' mind is identical with the ultimate nature of Buddha's mind. And so that is an indication that there is a parallel between them. And thus, all beings have that. That represents the capacity by which all beings can become Buddhas. They're not essentially different. No. Rgyud.
하나님께서 주부 주름 그림지야리 수부 주름 그림지 이야리 저상 선제 탐제 시민구제에 유일체나 유일체나 그래서 디디를 라시네리 야리스 아니 주부 주름 라시네리 수부 주름 그림지 야리스 이 여상
The third reason, then actually it's interesting because it kind of explains the meaning of the word spiritual lineage, gotram. So, because there is a spiritual lineage, therefore, and then the conclusion drawn in the verse, because of these three reasons, therefore, then this embryo or this potential to become a Buddha exists always and everywhere in embodied beings. So it's referring to that that entity which is the main subject to be discussed. And so these are the three reasons which are given to assert that there is such a thing as that embryo. So the third reason that it's given is because that embryo itself is a spiritual lineage. How does that constitute a reason? It constitutes a reason because the word gotra means something which has the ability to develop, something which has the potential to evolve and produce virtuous qualities. If you read in the Sutra Alankara, it gives a literal interpretation of the word gotra as being the source of good qualities. So in Tibetan, the word for spiritual lineage is rik. And then that's always translated as gyur ruma. Gyur ruma means able to become a Buddha. So that spiritual lineage is that which has the capacity to give rise to Buddhahood. And then in two senses, there are two aspects to the spiritual lineage. The innate spiritual lineage, the innate aspect of the spiritual lineage, ramshi neri, which is that mind's absolute nature. And that has the capacity to develop into Buddhist Dharmakaya. And then there's a developed form of spiritual lineage, which is that out of that innate capacity, then begin to arise spiritual qualities in terms of relative truth entities, minds, virtuous minds. And those virtuous qualities that represent the developed form of the spiritual lineage are what have the capacity to produce the Buddha's physical form. Those are the aspects of what's called the spiritual lineage. And spiritual lineage is being identified with the embryo of the Buddha, which is Tathagatagarbha. So that's the thesis is Tathagatagarbha exists for these three reasons. The Buddhas radiate everywhere, and they are able to have an effect on everyone. Then the second one was that essentially no difference between the ultimate nature of everyone's mind and the Buddha's ultimate nature of the Buddha's mind. And the third reason is that that quality represents potential to give rise to spiritual qualities, to spiritual lineage. It represents that quality, and therefore it is the embryo for Buddhahood. And it exists everywhere, in everyone.
다른 뭐 그래서 저는 20초지. 그래서 교화의 교훈. 저는 20초지. 저는 20를 담박군이 들어가셨어요. 저기 교훈. 저는 20초지. 저는 20다. 20초 저는 좋습니다. 이제. 이미로 들릴 때니 Shubuda Subini Richard. I want to Shubu to give the rationality teacher. Then Subu to get it. Educated. That is son of the top, and I Minji Chamber Kumia, Jampa Chamber Kumia, Jajuis and Kumia, and then Chimbataya, Sabah Kumia, Tatu Kangalo, Subutu GH. Tuni Komba Kangalo, Tuni to be city, Shitos, Budu GH, and then Tabaku to a show, Seven Jugular. Gyumed Jitana Rationalis, Miaris. Then you can shower and do issue torture yaris. Son of the torture yaris. Son of the torture Kangakare Gyumed. That issue torture, that issue torture Gyumed.
You can follow the
Yeah, that company rationality and Gyumed Mark. The son of Tommy to the Loti and Gyumed. Carriers and cook. Yanga Balama Jones, Yanga Balama Jones, Toga somebody of Kumbacha. That some the rationale said to some Jacob Yamara, Toman and Melanie. You have a cherry.
Rationality.
Oh, rationality. Some rationing never did. You must tell us some rationing never take your tomb never a yard. The yard is in the did. Macham, but a big Macham, not so many Magum. Just a Magum check every son and it is empty, never the assembly to but it is the yard. I mean, the combatant, Tombal near Chobata Samba combatant, semi chunity connectments. Chima, reverse to tap. Semi chunity to the Lochidia. Or taste can try to be a or things and that, and do the killer, Sonami, she told me very detailed rigs is.
So we, relating to this topic of giving reasons to justify the notion that everyone has the potential to become enlightened, that it resides in everyone. There's a verse that's we recite regularly. Many of you know by heart, Gawadi, which is the virtue that you gain from listening to the Dharma, virtue that you gain from carrying out spiritual activities. Then Gyokun, what Gyokun means, you're dedicating it to all sentient beings. Then by this virtue, my virtue, then may all sentient beings then be able to culminate or perfect the two accumulations of merit and wisdom, and thereby achieve the two bodies. Dhammakuni means two supreme bodies, the Dharmakaya and the Rupakaya. First is act of dedication, that you want your virtue to promote the attainment of the two bodies in everyone else. But we can use the meaning of that verse to address this notion of spiritual lineage. So there's a correspondence between our fundamental state and then the path and then the result. So our fundamental state is having the spiritual lineage. And the path is exemplified by the accumulation of merit and wisdom. And the result of the path is that the accumulation of wisdom produces the Dharma body, Dharmakaya, and the accumulation of merit produces the Rupakaya. And that applies to us as well. So then this spiritual lineage or this seed of enlightenment has a connection with that notion. So that spiritual lineage has two aspects to it. Then Rangshin Nerik is actually, it's a qualified, it's an adjective. Rangshin Nerik is that which exists naturally. And that means that is something which is not produced. That is something which has never not existed. That innate form of spiritual lineage is the emptiness of the mind, the impure mind, the unenlightened mind. So that is really the source of all spiritual qualities, but in particular, then the mind that meditates on that is the wisdom that is essentially the cause for the Dharmakaya. And if you do not engage in any spiritual activities, you still have that potential. It exists, sort of, gotta say, it's not manifest. It's not evident. It may not show any spiritual tendency. You still have that quality. So then the second aspect of that spiritual quality, or spiritual lineage, is that based on awakening it, which is an important notion, to awaken the spiritual lineage, is then by engaging in appropriate activities, then we begin to develop spiritual qualities. And then those spiritual qualities themselves, will be they loving kindness or compassion or wisdom or any other spiritual quality, those represent the developed form of spiritual lineage. And those developed form of spiritual lineage, in particular those that represent merit, such as bodhicitta, the generosity and morality and patience that are generated by moderation of bodhicitta, those constitute essentially the cause that brings the rupakaya. Then the wisdom element, which mainly is focused on the innate form of spiritual lineage, then that is while that is accumulates the wisdom accumulation that brings the Dharmakaya, the mind of wisdom itself also falls in the category of the developed form of spiritual lineage. So it all starts with the innate form of spiritual lineage, which needs to be awakened, and then all the qualities, positive qualities that flow from it, are identified as being good, means the developed form of the spiritual lineage. And developed implies that you have spiritual qualities.
But then, the Bodhisattva Maitreya, Jebedi, see. Treating Jebedi, you can me so general. Just a church to Jebedi, a certain severe. She would tell us severe. When you sometimes she would tell severe. And the treating to the pudging condensed genius last year. Cheva Pogue, pudging condensed chair. But Pogue, pudging condensed. Members, teachers. Pudging to be young and year. Just member Poine, rather Jodi, you, Susuna. Social sociality, Shandara Tamati, Jimmy and Eton here. Jimmy and Eton here. Remember this in the Kane, Donate, Serene and Eton here. Kane, we are Kane, Donate, Serene and Eton. Aniti inigasu ji karasu randu ji samnu kaya yarba, rāngi jīgī samdhā kārāsana, chūchūngi yāne, yanchū senda chūchūngi, sina, yanchū senda chūchūngi ki tī gyōyā kārāsā, yanchū senda chūchūngi tī mīchū tūnda chūchūngi tūnda, rāngi jīgī samdhā tī kārāsana, kārāngi sīnjēgi tūndu, chūchūngi kārāsana, rāngi jīgī samdhā tēsi. 마당 제 어디 추동이 양내 생기 양파주 그래서 중요한 게 지 중요하지 가신 도시도 년부터 준주이 인터넷이 선지지도 따야지 안 되냐네. 이 수지 이 간대이나면 삼바를 지어라. 이 되게 삼도 따야지 시에르냐면 그래. 아니 제가 문제지 저한테는 지야지 시에르냐면 지게.
So Rinpoche further notes in this verse that its sort of main function or its main purpose is to carry out the act of dedication. And what you're dedicating is your merit as well as your wisdom. When he noted that if we're listening to a subject such as this text, which deals with the topic of emptiness, then by the very nature of the subject, it involves wisdom. So we're dedicating it as listeners, the students, the audience. The teachers dedicating it as the teacher. So chen means the dual, two things going on, teaching is going on and listening is going on at the same time. So that process can generate both merit and wisdom if those two activities are done in such a way that all 6 elements of the 6 paramitas are combined in the act, whether it be the act of listening or the act of teaching. And so there are numerous texts which address that point. We do all 6 of those things at one and the same time. So in the case of the verse, your aim is to dedicate it. That's a form of generosity. You've created some virtue by listening, and you're willingly transferring it to the welfare of others. So that's a form of generosity. Then, as you listen, your willingness to do so in a way where you don't allow any discomfort to, affect your attention. So you endure whatever factors might, be somewhat challenging, something that require you to put up with it. So just putting up with it, then that is willingly is a form of patience. Then, as you listen, then being mindful in such a way that you avoid or you reject any tendency in your mind to be pursuing the activity of listening and learning for your own exclusive benefit. And that form of thought would be inferior, non-Mahayana attitude. So pushing that away, not allowing yourself to accept that attitude represents morality. So in Bodhisattva morality, there are three main aspects of it. One of it is called the form of morality, which is the kind of restraint, holding yourself back, restraining yourself from engaging in inappropriate behavior. So this would be an inappropriate attitude. That's a form of Mahayana morality. Then listening with zeal, with listening with a kind of enthusiasm, a kind of then energy, with a kind of exertion that is put forth gladly, then that is the practicing effort. Effort is the occasion requires being able to put forth that exertion, and that's effort. And not turning away from that. Then doing so one-pointedly is concentration. Wisdom is the interesting one. What you said about wisdom, you said, as you're listening to the teaching, you're wondering to yourself, just the very act of asking yourself, what is this about? What is this subject really talking about? And in your mind, when you are, your mind is sort of trying to process what you're hearing. If you do that in a skillful way, then you are generating wisdom. Even the question of pondering what the subject means, that represents wisdom. And in relation to, in a broader sense, when you make a mandala offering, the symbolic offering of the universe itself and all its riches, you offer it to the Ratnas. That's a form of generosity, making an offering to the higher spiritual beings. When you are when you're listening to the Dharma, whatever the subject might be, and you think of the teacher, you think of yourself, you think of the subject as lacking self-existence, as not being a self-existent teacher, as not being a self-existent listener. The act of listening not being a self-existent act. The subject being taught not being self-existent. And consciously bringing that to mind repeatedly, then that is a form of wisdom practice.
only usually such only such to the body do the any son service correctly son is weird or things son serve son service at the Susan side to children due to the this is tuning Jodi, you certainly to Jodi, we were Sayami, we were tired Jodi to Susan.
So, so the mandal offering, for instance, or the offerings that are prepared here at the beginning of teachings are all related to this event, this teaching event. It's not simply, the virtue is not simply gained by listening and whatever merit or whatever virtue you generate directly through the act of listening. You make, at the beginning of the teaching, you make the mandala offering. So that is a form of generosity. It produces merit. The offerings are made. Those also are a form of generosity and produce merit. When you begin, at the beginning of teaching, you make a prostration. It's not directly involved in the actual listening to the instruction per se, but it is something that we do as part of the overall event. And each time that you make a prostration, then in the scriptures, I believe the Shiksha Samachaya is one source, says that when you make a prostration, then your body is lying prone on the ground, and then however many particles of earth are being covered by your body, not only directly below your body, but all the way down to what is called the golden foundation of the earth. So the core of the earth has some golden base. So between that and where you are on the surface of the earth, all of these particles of earth are being covered by your body. That many particles is the amount of virtue that you accumulate, each one of those units of virtue being the virtue that would cause you to be born as a Chakravati ruler, as a universal king. So that simple act of prostration is considered something that can generate enormous amounts of merit. So these are, when we think and we recite the verse, we should be aware of all of these factors that contribute to what we're doing when we gather here.